I'm just about to head back to Ohio for Christmas, and while I'm there, I like to drive around my hometown and reminisce about the great times that I had when I lived there. But one of the things I missed the most undoubtedly were the cars. The car spotting in the era that I lived there, especially between 2010 and 2013, was amazing. And in today's video, I'm going to take you on a trip down memory lane as we look at some of the cool cars that I saw when I lived in Ohio. Now, the period of time we're going to be discussing is between 2010 and 2013, and that's because, well, before then, cameras were pretty terrible. There was a period of time when I would get on my bike to go car spotting, and I would have my cell phone for communication, an actual camera, and then my iPod to listen to music while I was biking. Of course, all of those things would eventually become condensed in the smartphone, but at the time, well, they didn't really exist, or they weren't particularly great. I've got my computer open so I can see some of these photos, but the first car we have to talk about, starting right at the top, was the Carrera GT. There was a GT Silver over Ascot 05 Carrera GT in my hometown. This car was incredibly special, and I actually talked about it a little bit in another video, but it was so special that when it arrived, the local newspaper published that the owner of this car was going to go to Georgia to learn how to drive it. And we saw this car around a lot, just kind of driving and cruising through town, stopping for dinner occasionally. The guy would get gas at the local BP and cigarettes too, and would just kind of drive around in his Carrera GT. My understanding is the guy still has the car. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I haven't run the Carfax in a while, but nonetheless, we saw it all the time, and the guy just kind of drove it like a normal car. And it was, little did I realize how special it was to see this car. I mean, obviously I knew it was a Carrera GT and it was a supercar and things, but as time has gone on, to look back at these pictures, to just see it driving around, that was crazy. And to see it with the regularity we did was also pretty nuts. All right, this next car, Ferrari Testarossa. This is a monospecchio car, meaning that it has the single flying mirror. These are relatively sought after in the Testarossa community because they had the single mirror, which is weird and kind of cool, but they also had the knockoff wheels with the center locks, which are really neat. This car, with the license plate flat 12, belonged to a judge who didn't live far from me. He actually traded it in at a local exotic car dealership and got a 612 to replace this, which I don't think there are too many people who have made that move. But nonetheless, we saw this Testarossa all the time. The guy was super nice. He would always let us check out the car and was really cool about it. But this car was something we would see with some frequency. And the Ferraris of this era, the 80s and 90s, were pretty common to see in my hometown at that time. The kind of way it works is that exotic cars start out living on the coasts, and as they depreciate, they work their way into the middle of this country. I think this Testarossa was no exception to that, but it was really cool to see it driving around. On the topic of Ferraris, there were a lot of them. I remember I used to have like a list in addition to photos that I would keep track of how many we had seen throughout the summer. At one point, I remember seeing 17 different Ferraris that lived in my hometown, which for northeastern Ohio in a small town is pretty incredible. But this picture is really special. So I'm referring to this 355 Spider, F355 Spider, and 360 Modena that I just happened to catch passing one another. I took lots of pictures of both, but it was just, to see both together, to me, especially as a Ferrari fan at that time, was really cool. So, and they're special cars. So to see these just driving around was fun. There were a lot of 360s in my hometown. I'll feature a couple of them in here, but nonetheless, seeing a 355 and a 360 side by side, you just don't come across that all that often. Now this is a special car, Spyker C8 Laviolette. This belonged to a guy named Steve. He since sold the car on Bring the Trailer. But this car, oh man, it was special. I remember seeing it for the first time, and like most people, I thought, what the heck is that thing? I remember seeing it at a local gas station where he kind of explained what the car was, that it was a Dutch manufacturer, that Spyker used to make cars long ago. Now they make these kind of boutique cars. He claimed that the interior is designed by Louis Vuitton, which is not accurate, but it was really cool. All the jet motifs on the car, and it was just like seeing a spaceship. I then remember going on YouTube, and I think at that time Matt Farah had just put a video out on not the Smoking Tire, but Garage 419, which was the YouTube channel he had before that, where he was driving a Spyker C8 Spider, and that's where I started to learn about these cars. But I just remember being blown away because the thing looked so alien, it was so cool and weird. and just to see it driving around my hometown was cool. This guy had several interesting cars. He also had a 550 Barchetta, which I have these terrible pictures that were taken on my friend Ryan's cell phone. He also had a 427 Cobra replica and a Duesenberg replica, so kind of a weird garage. I remember his daily driver was also a Volkswagen Phaeton, and his wife had a BMW 760 as her daily driver. So really weird collection of cars, but the Spyker undoubtedly was the coolest in his collection, and we saw it all the time. Another car that I mentioned relatively recently, but I have to again, is this Verde Ithaca Lamborghini Murcielago Roadster. Not too many of these cars were ever finished in Verde Ithaca, which is a shame because it looks so awesome, but this car was really cool. Yes, it was an E-gear car, but seeing it around was just insane. I also always saw it the same way. Roof on, lift up. The guy never put it down. I don't know why. I know that driving with lift up for that long is very bad, and having the roof on is ridiculous, but this guy always drove it that exact way. Now, this guy also went to jail because he was writing false prescriptions to patients or prescribing them stuff they didn't need and was getting a kickback from a pharmaceutical company. And of course, he bought a bright green Lamborghini because it's just too perfect. But we did see this car an awful lot, and it was a treat every single time. I really wonder what happened to the car now. No clue where it is. I know he had to sell it as a result of the lawsuit and subsequent jail sentence, but really cool car, and it was always a treat. Ferrari 308 GTS. Now, again, the 308's not a necessarily super special car, but seeing them when we did was kind of cool because at the time, 308s were just like $35,000, $40,000 cars all day long, all comers. So to see them driving around was cool, and I remember specifically my friend Ryan and I were out biking and we were talking to the owner of one. He said, "Oh yeah, you know, it's just a 308." And he was kind of bashful about it, and I was like, it's still a Ferrari. I mean, that's like, it's much cooler than our bicycles. So I thought that they were really cool, and you did see them occasionally. They were, you know, more attainable to enthusiasts, so people were using them and driving them and enjoying them. This guy was relatively young at the time, I remember that. So nonetheless, I just love seeing the wedge era cars. They're just so cool. More Lamborghini madness. So there is a guy in town named Tim, and he had quite a car collection, easily the most of anybody in town, and most of the exotic cars we saw were his, just because he had a ton of them. He had 5 Ford GTs, which I'm shocked I couldn't find pictures of those, but he absolutely had them. I remember he had a blue, white one, a white, blue one, 2 Golfs, and a red one. Ridiculous. But he also had these 2 cars. So Lamborghini Diablo SV and Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera. We saw the Superleggera definitely more than the Diablo. He and his son would drive these cars around all the time. They were the nicest people. They would stop and talk to us for 45 minutes about cars. It was a tight-knit community for sure, and I'm very grateful that they indulged us. I hope we weren't too annoying, but getting to talk about exotic cars was just so much fun. This 360. This 360 I chased for years. My friend Brad said that he saw a silver 360 Spider driving around once, and I was like, yeah, right. I'm out biking every single day, every single time the weather's nice. My friend Ryan and I had never seen it. So there was always this kind of elusive 360 we were hunting, and it was this car. And it's pretty interesting because I think that's Grigio Silverstone over a gray, or I think it might be like light gray interior, which is not the best color combination, but I didn't realize it was a 6-speed. I had forgotten that. So kind of an interesting car. Only saw it this one time. This was going to my birthday dinner, and it truly was the only time I ever saw the car, the entire time I lived in Hudson. But we chased it for years and finally tracked it down. And I remember I was just thrilled that we found it. It was like, all of this is like bird watching or being on safari. You're hoping to see the rare game, and that 360 was kind of my my white rhino, if you will. Like I promised, here's another Ferrari 360. This one is a Modena, and it's a 6-speed. At the time, the 6-speed cars were not desirable. Everybody wanted F1. It was really crazy. There was no price premium for these cars at that time. If anything, the manuals were less expensive. That applied to pretty much everything. So a number of the cars that we saw in town had manual transmissions. Of course, now these are sought after, but at the time they were just kind of, That was the less expensive way to get into an exotic. This 355 is very special to me. This one belongs to my friend Gary and his son Ryan, who again I mentioned is my best friend, and they would drive this car all the time. Gary bought that car in 2005 and still has it, and it's in San Diego now. It moved out here with him in 2012. He still has the car, and I'll have to do a video on that specific car at some point. It's very near and dear to my heart. It got me into cars, which is a whole story, But yep, I have some great pictures of it driving around, but we saw it all the time. So it was kind of fun to have an entry point into the exotic car game because, well, Ryan's dad had a Ferrari. And so we always could talk about that. But it was just seeing it parked around town, so special. I still love that car. This car is weird. So this is a Ferrari 400i Cabriolet. Ferrari never built this car. This was a conversion done by a company called Straman, who has done a number of Ferrari Cabriolet conversions. We never saw this car. It was maybe twice the time I lived there, and to see it parked was really weird, but it was also kind of desirable. Black on tan, the most desirable color combination for the 400i, and it was a 5-speed, which has become pretty sought after in that community. But I remember seeing it and being very confused because I was like, isn't the Mondial the only convertible like Ferrari like of this ilk? And I was wrong. I didn't realize that this technically existed. Really cool to see this, and I remember I spent like 20 minutes looking around the car, being just like scratching my head, being, what is this thing? But super cool. I don't know where that car is today. I really wonder, but it's pretty neat. I'd love to have one. The F430. So this picture was taken circa 2012, and the F430 was not that old of a car. This particular one, I believe, is a later one, and I remember freaking out and taking my usual pictures. I would always do a photo set. I would take a picture of the front 3/4, interior, rear, all that stuff. And the owner saw me taking pictures of the car, and he was like, hey, do you want to sit in it? And I was like, of course, sure. And so I hopped in the car. It was just thrilled. It was very generous. I liked to do that when I have my 355. I like to let people sit in it. But that like made my day. And those little small actions like that really had an impact on who I am as a car enthusiast. But seeing F430s, it was not that common. The 360 was substantially more common. So the F430, the 458 had come out, but hadn't really made its way into the Midwest yet. So seeing an F430 driving around was really special. That was kind of the newest, hottest Ferrari that you would see. Speaking of nice days, this Aston Martin V8 Vantage. This car signaled the beginning of spring. The owner who drove this car drove it all the time. They were the first people to be out the second the weather became nice. And so whenever we'd see this car, it's like, oh, spring is here. We only have to hang on for a little bit longer until we're out of winter fully. But anytime I saw this V8 Vantage, it was really cool. This one was just an automatic white V8 Vantage, nothing too special there. But anytime we'd see it, we just knew that was the signal that nice cars were coming. First gen NSX, how cool is that? Now at the time, again, these were not expensive cars at all. When I turned 16, these cars, you could get one for sub 20 grand all day long if you wanted to. So I still thought they were cool. I always felt like, oh, maybe, I could have this as my first or second car. That didn't work out, and boy, I wish I had done that. But they were really neat, and I knew the NSX was special. Didn't know much about it at the time, because again, I was interested more in European exotic cars, but still, seeing one was a rare and special sight, especially in pretty stock condition, so I was thrilled to see this one. Another F430. This one is interesting because it belonged to a guy who put the license plate on the back, and I'll never forget, it was LASIK. He was an eye surgeon, and he made his fortune by doing a lot of LASIK surgery. And so he put the license plate LASIK on the back of this car, but he had just gotten it when I took these pictures. It was this was in 2012, and he was really thrilled. So my friend Brad, Ryan, and I were all freaking out about the car, and he comes out of the restaurant beaming with pride to show us the car and let us all sit in it, and we were talking about cars. And really, again, a really very nice guy. Most of the people in the automotive community were very kind, but I knew he was proud of this car, and then we saw it for a long time, and I think he bought a 488 after this, and the license plate LASIK, I think it was LASIK or LASIK 1 or LASIK with a 1 for the eye, I can't remember, something like that, is still around, and he still has it on a Ferrari. But I remember seeing this car really well. Hope he's doing well wherever he is, but it left a special imprint on my mind. DBS, one of my favorite cars. This car, I don't remember seeing it more than once or twice, but nonetheless, sometimes people would come in from out of town, or from a neighboring town, they, before they'd send their cars out to, go to Florida, in this case, all the snowbirds. But this DBS was just beautiful. It was also that night that we saw the first F10 M5 in our hometown. I remember it was debadged, but we all were freaking out over the Aston, but we freaked out more over the M5 because wow, it's the new one. And I remember the owner was like not so pleased because he had specifically requested that the car be debadged so nobody would notice it. Well, that didn't work out, not with us car enthusiasts anyway, but nonetheless, this DBS comes from a very special night I remember it really well. Another 360, in this case, yet another red-black Modena, also a 6-speed with the license plate Fortunate. remember talking to this guy, and he was just as nice as could be, and was just so into the car. Every time I would see these cars and the owners would come out, they always wanted to have a conversation about it because I could have a knowledgeable conversation about Ferraris. A lot of the time I was also wearing a Ferrari polo. Every Friday was Ferrari Friday, and so I would have my Ferrari shirt on, and so we just wanted to talk about cars. A lot of the time they were into Formula One and stuff like that, so there were great conversations that could be had. But seeing this one in fall in my hometown, you know, the weather's getting cooler, these cars are gonna be tucked away. That always made me really sad, but this was a really cool spot. I don't think this car is there anymore. I don't think any of these cars are in Hudson anymore, but nonetheless, I remember all these interactions really well, and I remember that license plate in particular kind of stuck in my mind. Fortunate. Now, this was a weird day. This actually comes courtesy of my friend Brad, because he told us where this car was. But we had been kind of driving around. He told us there was a Ferrari 355 that was just abandoned outside. And we didn't really believe it, but eventually Brad showed us where it was, and sure enough, hidden behind some recycling bins and plugged in was an F355 Barchetta. Red tan, 6-speed car. Of course, incredibly desirable these days, but at the time it was parked outside, no cover on, and the first time we saw it, the thing was covered in snow, which is just ridiculous to think now. Allegedly, the reason for this was, and Brad somehow found this out by talking to the owner, was that the car that the owner had bought to have as his fun car was like a brand new Mercedes E-Class. And that was worth more than the Ferrari. So by his logic, the Ferrari should sit outside. And so it did, which was ridiculous. It shows you how much things have changed in that period of time. That E-Class is probably on its 5th owner by now and is worth not very much. And the 355 is worth considerably more than the E-Class was. But man, that just goes to show you how inexpensive a lot of these exotic cars got at the time. Crazy. And the last car, we'll close out with Porsche 930 Turbo. This belonged to my friend Will. His dad had this car, had a number of very cool Porsches. This was his 930, and it was so nice. Why he had this black bra for it, I'm not sure. I didn't see the car with the bra on it that often. I think he'd either just taken it on a road trip or something like that. But the guy used his cars all the time. He had a couple of air-cooled 911s, but he had a lot of really cool cars. But this 911, seeing it kind of where I did, kind of end of the day, right by downtown, right by the clock tower, very Hudson. And that kind of sums up what it was like for me. Anytime I wanted to go out and see cool cars, I would hop on my bike, go downtown, and I'd see a lot of cool stuff. I think this also kind of underscores why I like European cars so much. That's just what I saw. In my hometown, that's what there were a lot of. And so I grew up with an interest around European cars because that's what I had access to. I was really fortunate to do so, but nonetheless, looking back at these pictures just makes me so nostalgic. My friend Ryan and I just had the greatest time riding our bikes, being on car safari constantly. And that's what it was like to go car spotting in the early 2010s. It was a lot of fun. Those are some of my great memories of being at home, and I hope you enjoyed going through them with me. In another video, I'll go car spotting around La Jolla or somewhere here in San Diego to show you what it's like now in the world that I live in, but I treasure these images and I treasure these memories even more. Thank you all so much for watching. Happy holidays, and I'll talk to you very soon. Goodbye.